the understanding that the recipes for happiness that we have inherited from our educators, from our parents, don't work. That's also a good thing, because in most cases, right? In most cases, 99.99% of the cases, if we think about it, most of us, we have inherited recipes for happiness, like, getting married to the right person, having the right type of education, having the right type of job, living in the right type of neighborhood, having the right type of house, the right type of car, the right type of retirement, and the right type of grave, with a nice tree on top of the grave, so that's going to be very comfortable, especially if we live in South California or Arizona. So this type of recipes for happiness, at some point, it becomes obvious that they don't work.
Welcome to Letting Go and the Greatest Secret, where we explore the end of your suffering and the beginning of lasting happiness. I'm Hale Dwoskin, and today we'll be talking with Frances Lucille, who is a featured teacher along with me in Rhonda Byrne's book, The Greatest Secret. Frances Lucille is a spiritual teacher of non-duality in the tradition of Advaita Vedanta and the lineage of Jean Klein. His teachings are based on that the soul is self-existent awareness, limitless, and non-dual, that there is pure awareness within each living entity, which is the same in each and identical to the universe, to God, and to Brahman. For someone who may not know about non-duality or Advaita Vedanta, but is interested in being happy and discovering truth, how would you introduce this to them?
It's about happiness. My teacher, Jean Klein, he used to say that philosophy is the love for wisdom. And he defined wisdom as the science of happiness. So all human beings, whether knowingly or unknowingly, that which they have in common is that they all seek happiness. Even the one who pretend not to, they still, through whatever it is that they seek, in fact, they seek happiness. They seek peace, inner peace, absence of worries. So I don't think that Advaita or the direct path of non-duality is the only way to reach this goal. It's not for everybody. Sometimes it's too direct. Sometimes the slope is too steep. What it is about is this. The source of misery, of psychological suffering, is the belief that our true nature, that which we truly are, is somehow dependent upon, limited by, and confined within this human body-mind. This reality, which is hearing my words right now, is obviously our true identity. It is that which we call I, because we say, I perceive, I hear, I feel, I think, I decide, I will, I want, etc. So it is really this awareness, this reality which is hearing these words, which is the core of our experience as a human being, of our human experience. So it is our essence. It is that which we truly are. And so the question is this reality, which we know to be this awareness, dependent upon, limited by, confined within this human body-mind? Because if it is true, if it is the case, then peace of mind, worrylessness, and as a result, happiness is an impossibility. I am saying that because we can verify, each of us, that with no exception, every time we suffer, I'm not talking about physical pain, I'm talking about psychological suffering. Every time we experience psychological suffering, this suffering wouldn't be there unless we believed to be this human body-mind entity, or dependent upon it, or doomed to disappear with it. For instance, we all want to be loved because if we are not loved, we may be abandoned. We may be ostracized from the family, from the pack. And if we are not loved, we are going to be let outside to die. But that is possible only if you are this body. So the fear of absolute disappearance, the fear of death, or the fear of nothingness, of absolute nothingness, it's like of a sense of impending doom. That is the party pooper of our lives.
Yes, it is.
And so the liberation that you find in all traditions, not only in the which is the liberation that was found by the founders of most major religions. This liberation is precisely the liberation from this sense of impending doom. It is the party pooper that prevents our life to be a celebration. It is the bulky furniture that is there in the middle of the ballroom and prevents us from dancing. Now, as I said earlier, if it is true that awareness is dependent upon this body-mind, there is no hope. Simple as that. However, we have to investigate in order to come up with the true answer. The evidence we have, or we believe to have, that this awareness which is hearing these words right now, our true identity, is dependent of and limited by this body-mind, and as a result, that when the body-mind dies, it dies. We have to find out whatever evidence we have. And in this process, in this investigation, we will discover that in fact, we have zero evidence in support of the limited and separated awareness hypothesis. There is no evidence that supports it. It is a very important moment when we come to this conclusion.
What can we do ourselves, not necessarily do, but experiment with or look towards in order to make this discovery or have this direct recognition?
Well, each of us, we believe to have evidence that awareness is dependent upon the body. Because we have been conditioned, we have been raised in a culture which believes that to be the case. I think ignorance, meaning the belief to be a separate entity, is the religion on the surface of the earth which has the biggest congregation.
It does.
Because 99.99% of people believe that such is the case.
Mm-hmm.
Fortunately, truth is not a democracy, right? Albert Einstein, he was the only one in 1905 thinking that time and space were not independent, that there was a connection between them.
Right.
He was the only one. He was right against the rest of mankind. So truth is not a democracy. So we have to be open to, we have to empower ourselves by understanding that truth is not a democracy. And also we have something else to understand, that the only one who can find out the truth about awareness is us, nobody else. No Nobel Prize in psychology or neuroscience, not the Pope or whoever, or Francis, has authority to tell us what we are, has authority above ourselves. We are the final judge on this matter. Only we can make this determination. Is awareness, as far as I know, dependent upon the body? Or is there another possibility? But we need to be interested. We need to have heard, for instance, the words I've just said. And these words may have begun a process in us, ignited a flame in us. Once this flame has started, it will never go extinct before the entire building of ignorance has been burned down. Nobody remains, nothing remains of it. And then the dance floor is ready for the celebration.
Yeah, it is a celebration. So, is there experiments you can do or things you can explore that help fan the flames?
Well, as I said, the main obstacle is a lack of interest. You have to be at least a little bit interested. If we are a little bit interested and ask ourselves questions about what we have heard or what we have read, this interest is going to grow over time. It's like the little flame of the match, turning into something bigger. And the investigation begins the very moment we become interested. Something arouses our interest. And then this investigation will take us wherever it has to take us. We are going to follow the leads, so to speak. And but the general pattern of the investigation is the investigation of the evidence we believe to have, either a conceptual evidence or a more intimate physical feeling evidence on the feeling level. We have that this awareness we know to be is dependent upon the body-mind, or is limited, or is an object. Each of us has a different journey. All the paths lead to the same place ultimately, but each of us travels on a different path because travels on a different path because we all believe to have different pieces of evidence that support our belief that awareness is limited. So as a result, gradually, progressively, or increment by increment, the various pieces of evidence we believe to have, that awareness is limited, mortal, human, whatever, will dissolve. Paving the way to this extraordinary possibility that this apparently ordinary awareness, apparently limited, apparently human awareness, which is hearing these words right now, is in fact universal, meaning shared by all. And in addition to that, that this awareness is also the reality that creates and sustains the world in which our human bodies move and have their being. So that this awareness is in fact the only reality there is. If you will, if we use Spinoza's definition of God, that this awareness is that which is cause of itself, an infinite substance, an infinite reality, which is the reality of everything and of all beings, and therefore our own reality, and therefore our own identity, free from becoming, free from time, eternal, the source of beauty, the source of intelligence, and the source of love. Self-sufficient, independent, free.
As this unfoldment takes place within us, are there certain signposts, or are there...
Yes.
I'll stop with there then.
Well, as I said, when the fire starts, sometimes we are not even aware that the fire has started.
Right.
And when we get aware of it, it's too late already.
Right.
Usually it's not a good thing, but in this case, it's a very good thing.
Yes.
So if you are asking me what are the signs that the house is already on fire?
Yes. Besides smelling smoke, how can you tell?
Yeah, no, I'm talking about the smoke, these metaphors, the smoke and the heat, right? And the light.
Yes.
And so it depends on the stage. In the beginning, it may be like a question that comes to us in a fleeting way. What am I? Or I've heard this guy, Dale or whoever, say something, and it has somehow catch my attention, but grabbed my attention, but I don't know really how or what it was. Then I need to revisit that. You see, this type of kind of confused, vague interest, but still an interest. And then this interest can become more precise. It can be about, yes, what am I? Or it can be something else. It can be, for instance, the understanding that the recipes for happiness that we have inherited from our educators, from our parents, don't work. That's also a good thing, because in most cases, right? In most cases, 99.99% of the cases, if we think about it, most of us, we have inherited recipes for happiness, like, getting married to the right person, having the right type of education, having the right type of job, living in the right type of neighborhood, having the right type of house, the right type of car, the right type of retirement, and the right type of grave, with a nice tree on top of the grave, so that's going to be very comfortable, especially if we live in South California or Arizona. So this type of recipes for happiness, at some point, it becomes obvious that they don't work. In fact, when we realize that these recipes for happiness don't work, we think, I was so stupid to follow the recipes for happiness that I inherited from my parents and my teachers, because all it took would have been to look at them, realize that they were not happy, and therefore, why would I, it's like, it's like this guy who sells you, you had these infomercials on TV.
Yes.
And they tell you how to become billionaire dealing with real estate or whatever, and how they have made millions doing that. So the question that comes, why are you asking me money if you have such an easy way to make zillions on the stock market or in real estate? Why? If you have the recipe for happiness, show me that you're happy. Don't ask me to bring you something for your happiness. So the same is here. So sooner or later, having followed the recipes for happiness that have been handed down to us by our culture, we realize they don't work. So then there is something interesting. On the one hand, it becomes obvious that the recipes for happiness don't work. On the other hand, we know that there is something like happiness. There is such a thing as happiness because, at least fleetingly, we have experienced happiness, at least fleetingly. And then, when you try to, in hindsight, to analyze the mechanism of happiness, we realize that we can observe and notice that the way it happens, usually, is that we have a desire. And all of a sudden, somehow, the desire gets fulfilled. And instantaneously, at that moment, there is a kind of a burst of happiness. So what is it that we experience when a desire gets fulfilled. What we experience at that moment is the desireless state. The object that we have acquired at the time of the fulfillment of the desire, at that moment has become almost irrelevant to the happiness. The happiness is there mostly in the desireless state. Let me illustrate that with an example. Let's assume I am poor, I have had a long desire to buy this beautiful house, but I don't have the money. All of a sudden, the news comes that this distant uncle has passed away. And I inherit $3 million, out of which I can buy this house for 1.5. What happens? Instantaneously, I am delighted. I am experiencing enormous happiness, although I'm not in the house yet. I have to go to the real estate agent. I have to get the money from probate. I mean, all kinds of steps need to be taken before I can move into this house as the landlord. So obviously, the happiness is not in living in the house because I'm not in the house. And later on, let's say 3 months later, finally I got the keys and I am in my house. Of course, there is a moment of happiness then too, because I was now expecting this moment when I would finally have the key, enter the house, and I would be in my house. But really, not as much as the news of my inheritance, which shows that the happiness I experienced was not in living in the house. And the second time, it was in getting the key and not in living in the house, because now I've been in the house for 2 years, and it has become normal. And perhaps I have other problems, and I am miserable again, because then I realize that owning this house was not putting an end to my psychological suffering. So we realize at that moment that happiness is not in objects or in events that may happen, but mysteriously, it is somewhere else. So where can it be? Where can it be? Now, what my teacher was saying is this. It was very simple. Our human experience is twofold. It's like two sides of the same coin. There is one side we can call the phenomenal side. It is everything we experience through the external senses, what we see, what we hear, what we touch, what we smell, what we taste. And then there is the private side, if you will, the inner side, which in turns is comprised of two main categories. One is all the bodily sensations, pleasure, pain, etc., hunger, thirst. And the other side, which is private also, are the thoughts. That's one side of the coin, the phenomenal side. And the other side, which we could call the non-phenomenal side, is awareness itself. That which what we call I, that which perceives the phenomena. The part that remains the same, our true identity, our reality. Now, if we have acquired through experience. This understanding that happiness cannot be found in objects, in phenomena. And since our human experience has only these two sides, and since we have, no matter how fleeting, we have had the experience of happiness, the conclusion is that it has to be the experience of the other side. In other words, the experience of happiness has to be the experience of our noumenal sides, non-phenomenal side. In other words, the experience of awareness and the experience of happiness are one and the same. That's a great secret. It doesn't feel like that because what we project, the picture we have of the experience of awareness seems to be different from the experience of happiness because we see awareness as something we can perceive objectively. But what I'm saying is something else. I'm saying that what we understand, what we experience as happiness is in fact the experience of awareness, knowing itself. Also, that which we experience as love is the experience of awareness, knowing itself. That which we experience as beauty is also the experience of awareness, knowing itself. That which we experience as intelligence or understanding is also the experience of awareness, knowing itself. Why am I saying that? Because we don't experience love without experiencing at the same time understanding. For instance, I'm talking about true love. If we love someone, in the moment when we love, we also understand the other. We are able to place ourselves in their shoes, so to speak, to see the thing from their perspective, to understand them from within. So in love, there is a form of intelligence. And intelligence, when we understand there is a form of happiness, and what people, they love to do, to solve crossword puzzles or play Scrabble or whatever, or bridge or chess. In the same way, when we are touched by music or by beauty, there is a form of understanding. We understand we understand beauty at that moment. And so these distinctions between truth, love, beauty, happiness are simply, it's like the Garden of Eden has several gates with different names. One has the name beauty, one has the name truth or intelligence or understanding, one has the name love, one has the name happiness. But in fact, once we are in the garden, it is the same garden. The difference is which path we take to access it, which gate we have to go through. But once inside, in the actual experience of the garden, all the qualities are one, they are all together.
How can we explore the garden? Or is that even possible to explore the garden? Is it more about seeing what's not the garden?
What is important is to be in the garden. Of course, what we don't know is that, in fact, we are already in the garden, all of us. Because, in fact, we are the garden. The garden is our true nature. So it is impossible not to be in the garden other than being in the garden and dreaming that we are outside of the garden. So we are, in fact, taking a nap in this delicious garden and dreaming that we are outside of it in the desert, being burned by the sun and being subjected to thirst and hunger. But in fact, we are all in the garden because we are the garden. As my friend William Samuel used to say, there is no way there but to be there. And the way there, and that's the direct path, is simply to be open to the possibility that we are already there. That this seemingly limited, vulnerable, miserable awareness is in fact the ultimate reality of the world, is in fact divine, eternal, pure peace, pure happiness, pure creativity. Just to be open to this possibility is the result of the investigation into the nature of this awareness, to find out what evidence we have that it is limited. Only to discover at the outset of this investigation that there was no such evidence, that we had been told a story that had been handed down from generation to generation in the tribe, according to which there was irrefutable, absolute evidence that awareness was limited. But nobody had taken the opportunity to investigate the validity of this alleged evidence. Everybody believed. You know, it's a story of the emperor being naked.
If there was an invitation or an exploration or just something you would want to leave people with that would support them in beginning this investigation, what would that be?
We are not doomed. Misery is not necessary psychological suffering. There is a way out of it if there is the desire to get out of it. If there is a will, there is a way. Most people are more attached to their belief systems than they are to the truth that can be revealed through their own investigation. As a result, in order not to discover the lie they live in order to preserve the lie they live in, they don't do their homework, they don't investigate the truth of what they are. For those, as Jesus used to say, those who have ears to hear and eyes to see. So for those who, upon hearing what I'm saying, become interested, they have just to follow their instinct. They have to trust their enthusiasm, their interest. They have to follow their interest. The path is easy. It's not a path of effort. It's simply follow your interest for the truth. And it will be like the compass that takes you to the pole, to the North Pole. No matter how meandering the path there can be, because you have to walk around mountains and around lakes and oceans. If you follow the direction of the compass, you'll end up at the right place. Remember, it is happiness. It is all about happiness.
I really enjoyed Francis Lucille's wisdom on awareness and happiness, and I hope you did too. It's a message to revisit again and again. To learn more about Francis and his teachings, and for hundreds of free videos, please visit his website, francislucille.com. That's francislucille.com. You will find a link in the podcast notes. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe so you have immediate access to future episodes. Please give us a 5-star rating and share it with the people you care about. If you'd like to learn more about my work, my mentor Lester Levinson's work, and the Sedona method, please visit sedona.com. As you explore our site, you'll learn the key to lasting happiness, success, peace, and emotional well-being. We have books, courses, events, and plenty of free material to explore. Again, go to sedona.com. That's sedona.com. Thank you for being here, and we'll catch you in the next episode of Letting Go and the Greatest Secret.